Hello everyone and welcome. In today's SHRM Practice Questions 109 Questions and Answers Practice session, we'll go through 109 updated questions designed to help you prepare for the exam. When each question appears, pause the video first. Choose the answer you believe is correct, then comment your answer below before resuming the video to see the correct answer. Keep track of your score as you move through the questions, and let's get started. Flashcard 1. Which of the following is a tool from the Six Sigma approach? A value stream mapping B, a TRIS C, Smart D flow state diagram. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is that value stream mapping is a tool from the Six Sigma approach that shows the value added by each step within the process. Flashcard 2. John, a new employee, has just arrived at the orientation program where everyone completes their payroll forms and signs up for health care benefits. He brings his W-4 form to you and says he isn't subject to payroll withholding because he pays his taxes directly each quarter. What is your response? That's okay. We won't process a W-4 form for you. We will give you a Form 1099. I'll check with the accounting department to find out whether you can do that. Unfortunately, all employees are subject to payroll tax withholding. If you can show me a W-10 form you have submitted to the IRS, we can block your paycheck withholding. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is if the new worker is classified as an employee on the payroll, the IRS demands that income tax, Social Security tax, and Medicare tax be withheld. People are not allowed to opt out because they want to file their own tax payments each quarter. Flashcard 3. The Wagner-Pacer Act protects employees who are A. Unemployed B. Injured on the job C. Unable to work because of pregnancy D. Have 2 or more jobs. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the Wagner-Pacer Act of 1933 provides for federal unemployment insurance and sets guidelines for state unemployment insurance programs. Flashcard 4. Mary has had a bad encounter with her supervisor, Henry. That evening after getting home from work, she pulls out her computer and sends a blistering blog post to her Facebook page. She names her company and her supervisor. She calls him unfair, big-headed, and without principles. What can the company do about her posting? The company can demand that she remove the offensive post. If she doesn't, the company can file legal action against her. The company can demand that Facebook remove the offensive post. If it doesn't, the company can file legal action against Facebook. The company is protected against such employee comments by the Fair and Decent Treatment Act and can take disciplinary action against Mary. The company is prohibited from any action against Mary because she is engaging in protected concerted activity. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Mary is protected by the National Labor Relations Act NLRA of 1935. The National Labor Relations Board has taken the position that almost all postings on the Internet, whether complaining about supervisors or employers or making charges that employees are treated unfairly or protected concerted activities under the Act. Flashcard 5. Pete is sensitive about security of his personal identity information since his credit card has been stolen twice in the past year. He is trying to clear up his credit rating because of the problems with the stolen cards. Now, he has approached the heart rate manager at his organization and requested that his Social Security number be removed from all of the company records. He thinks that a mistake could cause him more grief if the Social Security number were to be obtained by thieves. As a heart rate manager, what should you do? The company can and should delete the Social Security number from its records to protect Pete. There is a need for the company to keep the Social Security number for tax reporting. There is a need for the company to keep the Social Security number for census reporting. The company has no need for the Social Security number, but should keep it regardless. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is both the FLSA and the IRS regulations require employers to obtain and report Social Security numbers from all employees. A Social Security number is required for completion of the Form I-9 to prove authorization to work in this country. The company may not remove it from its records, regardless of how concerned Pete may be. Flashcard 6. Pat is talking with her colleagues about illegal discrimination at work. Someone mentions that the company is going to be sending out a request for updated race and sex information. Pat says that isn't legal. The company isn't supposed to track any of that information. Pat has not understood the FLSA requirements that employers keep race and sex data on employees. The EOC has issued guidelines that agree with Pat's belief that it is illegal to maintain that information in company records. Only federal contractors are required to maintain the race and sex identification for employees. It is only the public sector employees who are exempt from providing their race and sex identification to employers. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is race and sex data is specifically required by the FLSA. For employers with 15 or more people on the payroll who are engaged in interstate commerce, EOC regulations also require maintenance of those data records. Flashcard 7. The Tractor and Belt Company TBC handles conveyor belt installations for many small firms. Each of the customer projects begins on a day that is most convenient for the customer. Sometimes it's Monday, sometimes it's Thursday or some other day. A heart rate manager says that the company will adjust its work week to begin when the customer's project starts. That way, each installation team has a separate work week, and those work weeks can shift several times a month. What is your advice about this strategy? The heart rate manager is taking advantage of the FLSA provisions for flexible work weeks that support small business. No change is required. Once the work week has been designated to begin on a certain day of the week, it should not be changed by the heart rate manager. It depends on state laws and regulations whether the work week begins on any specific day of the week. The FLSA says a work week should always begin on Sunday. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 8. Sandy is 15 years old and a sophomore at Central High School. She gets a job at the local hamburger drive-in. Her boss says he needs her to work the following schedule. During the spring break week, 4 hours at lunchtime every day, 9 hours on Saturday, and 6 hours on Sunday. Is that schedule acceptable for Sandy given that she has a work permit from the school? Because it is a school vacation week, there are no restrictions on the hours that Sandy can work. Only state laws impact what hours Sandy can work because it happens during a vacation week. Federal law says Sandy cannot work more than 8 hours a day when it is a vacation week. Because Sandy won't be working more than 40 hours for the week, there's no problem. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the FLSA prohibits people aged 14 and 15 from working more than 8 hours in a day even when school is not in session. Flashcard 9. Gary is a junior at South Park High School. He is 17 years old. The school needs some help in its warehouse during the summer, and Gary needs a job so he can save money for college. His boss is the facilities manager. Terry is assigned to work 9 hours every day during the week because one of the other employees is on disability leave. And because the other employee was a forklift driver, Gary has been given training in how to drive that equipment around the warehouse and loading dock. He likes that duty because he has been driving a car for only a few months. The forklift is cool. Is there any difficulty with the facilities manager's requirements of Gary? Everything the facilities manager has required Gary to do is permissible under federal laws. Since there is no restriction to the number of hours Gary can work, everything should be okay. Whatever the facilities manager wants Gary to do is okay because it's only a summer job. Even though Gary can work unlimited hours, he cannot be assigned to drive the forklift. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is driving a power-driven hoisting apparatus is one of the 17 most dangerous jobs that may not be performed by workers younger than 18. At Gary's age, the FLSA has no restriction on the hours he may work in a week. Flashcard 10. Hank puts in the following hours at work: Sunday, 0, Monday, 8, Tuesday, 8, Wednesday, 9, Thursday, 8, Friday, 8, Saturday, 7. His boss says he will give Hank compensating time off for every hour of overtime Hank works. How many compensating hours off should Hank receive for this work time? A 1 day of compensating time off. B. 1.5 days of compensating time off. C. 7 hours of compensating time off. Compensating time off is not permitted under the FLSA. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the FLSA requires all hours of work in excess of 40 inches a week be paid overtime at the rate of 1.5 times the normal hourly pay rate. Compensating time off in lieu of overtime pay must be given at the rate of 1.5 hours for every overtime hour. So, a day of overtime 8 hours should be compensated for with 1.5 days of compensating time off. Flashcard 11. The tractor and belt company TBC doesn't have an heart rate manager. Heart rate is handled by the payroll clerk. When a new employee is assigned to the production department as an assembler, the payroll clerk raises a question. Should the new person be paid the same as all the other employees, all women in the department, or is it okay to pay her more because she made more at her former job? There are no restrictions on the amount a new employee can be paid. It is market driven. The Fair and Decent Treatment Act requires all people doing the same work to be paid the same amount. There is no restriction on the amount paid because all the incumbents are women. Once a valid market survey has been done, it can be used to determine starting pay for new people. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the Equal Pay Act requires men and women doing the same work to be paid the same rate. If there are no men in the job, only women, there is no Equal Pay Act issue. If all the incumbents are women, there is no employment discrimination based on sex because there is only one sex represented. So, with those conditions, there is no barrier to paying the new employee more based on her previous job's compensation. Flashcard 12. Finding a life insurance company to provide benefits to its workforce has been difficult for Joan, the heart rate manager. She decides to recommend that her company offer a self-insured plan. What controls might Joan have to consider in her planning? There are no federal restrictions on a company providing its own life insurance plan to employees. The Employee Retirement Income Security Act regulates welfare benefit plans, including life insurance. The Life Insurance Benefit Plans Act has control over what Joan is able to do with her idea. Only state laws will have an influence on Joan's development of a self-insured benefit plan. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is SHRM specifically regulates welfare benefit plans such as health insurance and life insurance. That is in addition to regulation of pension and retirement plans offered by employers. It makes no difference who underwrites the life insurance, the employer or a vendor. SHRM will still provide requirements. Flashcard 13. Simone has just been hired and is asked to complete a Form I-9. She offers her driver's license as proof of her identity. What else is required for her to complete the document? She may offer any document authorized on the Form I-9 instructions as proof of her authorization to work in this country. She must have a social security number to submit on the form. Simone has a U.S. passport, but is told that she can't use it for her Form I-9. As long as Simone offers to get a social security number in the next 30 days, she can submit her Form I-9. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the deadline for completing a Form I-9 is 3 days after hire. Any documents listed on the form are acceptable. The employer may not designate certain documents as requirements. A social security number is one way to demonstrate authorization to work in this country. A valid U.S. passport is also a way to demonstrate both identity and work authorization. Flashcard 14. Steve is the heart rate director for a crane operations company. He just got a phone call from one of his field supervisors with tragic news. One of their units has collapsed and their operator is in the hospital with serious injuries. What should Steve do with that information? Steve should immediately call the hospital to be sure all the insurance information is on file for their employee. He should notify the Occupational Safety and Health Administration about the accident and the injuries. He should notify the Crane Safety Institute of America to be sure they are able to add this accident to its database. Steve should call the crane operator's spouse to let her know about the tragedy. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the company has 8 hours after the accident to file its report of serious injury with OSHA. We don't know how long ago the accident happened, but it was long enough that the operator is now in the hospital. Steve should gather all the information needed for the report and get it called into the OSHA office. Flashcard 15. Every year Donner has to attend training on the use of the company vehicles she drives. She thinks this is a silly waste of time. Donner knows how to drive, and she knows the company vehicles. Why should she attend training every year? There is no federal requirement for Donner to take yearly training. OSHA requires training be done only once for vehicle operation. Only state safety provisions govern how frequently training must be done in Donner's situation. Safety programs must be developed that provide for refresher training on all equipment operating procedures. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is injury and illness prevention programs are required by OSHA. Part of the identification and remediation of workplace hazards is employee training. Even if employees have been trained on equipment operation, periodic refresher programs can help overcome bad habits that might have developed. Refresher programs conducted on a yearly basis represent a reasonable interval for Donner's situation. Flashcard 16. Jerry just arrived at work and found the sinkhole in the parking lot. He is early enough that other people have not yet begun arriving for work. Because the hole is about 10 feet across at the moment, what should Jerry be doing about the problem? If Jerry is a management employee, he should take charge of the situation and begin the process of alerting others to the danger posed by the sinkhole. If Jerry is a non-management employee, he should give his boss a call and leave a voicemail message, if necessary, about the sinkhole. If the sinkhole poses an immediate danger of death or serious injury, Jerry should call 911 and report it. He should barricade the perimeter of the sinkhole with tape or something else to prevent people from falling in. Jerry should first test the edges of the sinkhole to see whether it could grow in size. Then he should barricade the perimeter of the sinkhole so no one will fall in. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is It doesn't matter if jury is a manager or not. All employees should be trained to react to imminent dangers by taking immediate action to prevent anyone from serious injury. And walking up to the edge to see if it is going to collapse is just nuts. Flashword 17. Teresa attended a seminar recently that pointed out the need to post a yearly summary of injury and illness cases. Her boss doesn't want to do that, saying he doesn't want to publicize the problems the organization has had. Teresa should tell him posting requirements call for display of the report in a prominent location if there are 10 or more people on the payroll. Posting requirements can be met by putting a report on the back of the closet door in the employee lounge. Posting requirements can be met by making the report available in a binder in the heart rate manager's office. Posting requirements is optional, but good employers are using the report as a best practice in safety programs. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is, if she must, Teresa should show her boss the requirement in OSHA regulations. A prominent display location excludes places such as the back of the closet door or inside a binder somewhere in the manager's office. Flashcard 18. An employer routinely works with hazardous chemicals, trucking them for delivery to various customer locations. After each load, the truck must be cleaned before being loaded with a different chemical. Cleaning has to be done by someone inside the tank using special absorbent materials. What else should be considered? Personal protective equipment should be provided by the employer, including breathing apparatus and hazmat suits. Standard coveralls and boot covers should be provided for employees to use if they want. Workers should never be sent into a tanker truck for any reason. Breathing equipment is absolutely a requirement if someone will be in the tanker truck for longer than 30 minutes. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is working inside an enclosed space with dangerous fumes calls for hazmat equipment and adequate breathing equipment. OSHA regulations specify the personal protective equipment (PPE) necessary in this and other working conditions. Flashcard 19. Shelley has worked for the same dentist for more than 10 years. In all that time, there has been no mention of any special requirements for handling syringes. She arranges the doctor's equipment trays every day and cleans them up after they have been used. She just tosses the used equipment into the autoclave or into the trash if it won't be used again. If you were advising Shelley about the practices used in her dental office, what would you say? Needles should be broken off before they are thrown into the trash can. Sharps should be triple wrapped in a stiff paper to protect from sticking someone handling the trash. Any possible harm can be prevented if used syringes are placed into an approved Sharps container. Putting used syringes into any solid container that is wrapped in red paper is sufficient to meet requirements. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the Needle Stick Safety and Prevention Act requires all Sharps be disposed of in approved Sharps containers. It also requires posting of warnings and information about bloodborne pathogens. Flashcard 20. The price of gold is climbing, and folks at the Golden Nugget Mine are planning to reopen their operation. They know that safety is an important consideration. But what about federal regulations for gold mines? Are there such things? There are only OSHA regulations in general. All of those rules still apply. There are NCHR regulations to be considered, but because they are not in the coal mining business, the Golden Nugget Mine won't have to worry about them. NCHR rules apply to all mining operations in the United States. The Golden Nugget Mine will have to study those rules and get ready for inspections by the government. NCHR can tell the mine what to do, but it has no authority to conduct inspections because the Golden Nugget is not a coal mine. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. The Mine Safety and Health Administration has jurisdiction over all mining operations, not just coal mines. It handles safety complaints and conducts inspections of both above-ground and underground mining operations. All mine operators are required to conduct their internal safety inspections and maintain records of those inspections. /Shard 21. All of your suspects are payroll clerk of embezzlement. She has inspected the records for the past 3 months, and the pattern is clear. But to be sure it is the payroll clerk and not the accounts payable clerk, Olivia wants to confront her and demand she take a lie detector test. Good going, Olivia. He'd court her. Sure enough, demanding that she take a lie detector test is a good way to confirm your suspicions. While lie detector tests can be used for some employees, accounting employees are exempt. You can't test her. Lie detector tests are not permitted for any use by any employer. You can't test her. Lie detector tests can be required only in limited circumstances, and this isn't one of them. You can't test her. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is except for law enforcement, security officers, and people who handle controlled substances, lie detectors are no longer permitted in the workplace. They were commonly used prior to 1988's Employee Polygraph Protection Act. /Shard 22. For the past 6 years, Sam's company has been a federal contractor working on equipment for the Department of Defense. The company has additional contract opportunities coming up, and Sam isn't sure if there will be an extra burden related to disabled workers because they are subject to both the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act. Sam should rest easy. The ADR and the Rehabilitation Act are identical in their content and requirements. Sam's company has already met its recruiting obligations and now only has to worry about meeting ADR requirements. Handling job accommodation requests is a requirement of the ADR, but not the Rehabilitation Act. Things should be easier. Whatever Sam thinks, the ADR and Rehabilitation Act requirements have applied to his company for 6 years already. Adding more contracts won't change his current obligations. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Sam's company will not incur any additional obligations for disabled workers if they seek additional government contracts. They have been obligated under both laws for 6 years. /Shard 23. Cynthia works for a large multi-state manufacturing company and approaches her boss one morning and tells him that her husband has just received orders from the Coast Guard to report for deployment to the Middle East. They have a week to get everything ready for his departure. She wants to know if she can have excused time off during the coming week. If you were her boss, what would you tell her? She can have the time off, but it will be logged as unpaid and charged as FMLA leave. She can take the time off, but it will be unexcused because she didn't give more than a week's notice. If she wants the time off, she will have to use her paid vacation time for the week. Jennifer has already requested the week off for vacation, and only one person can be off at any one time, or the unit won't be able to function. Cynthia's request is denied with regrets. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is under the FMLA, Cynthia is entitled to unpaid leave of absence as a spouse of a covered medical service worker. It will be logged as unpaid time off, unless she wishes to use some of her accrued paid time off. It will also be logged in her record as FMLA leave. /Shard 24. Arthur has applied for a job with the AB Transit Company. He is told he must take and pass a urine drug test. If he fails the test and any subsequent random drug test after he is hired, he will be dismissed from the company. Arthur reacts loudly and says, "That's an invasion of my privacy. I won't do it." What happens now? Arthur can call his lawyer and have the drug test waived since he doesn't want to take it. Arthur can discontinue his participation in the AB Transit Company's employment process. Arthur can take the test now and still refuse to participate in random tests later. Arthur can have his friend take the test for him. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Arthur has to decide whether he wishes to continue seeking employment with the AB Transit Company. If so, he must participate in their drug testing program. If he wants to avoid testing, he must drop out of the job application process and seek employment elsewhere. Flashcard 25. Robert works for a congressional representative and suffers a disabling injury in an automobile accident. Robert cannot work more than 3 hours per day according to his doctor. Weeks later, when he returns to work, he asks for job accommodation and is told that it can't be done. When he presses the point, his supervisor says the reason is congressional staff people aren't covered by the ADR, so they don't have to even discuss his request. The requests he has made would exempt him from several of his job's key responsibilities. The request he has made would set a precedent that other representatives' offices would have to follow. Because congressional staff members have to meet the public every day, they can't have people seeing disabled workers in the office. It doesn't look good. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Even the congressional offices are subject to the ADR requirement to consider and discuss requests for job accommodations. Job accommodations must be made to make it easier for an employee to perform one of the job's essential functions. If he can't do that, even with an accommodation, he is not eligible for assignment to that job. If there is no other job available, the employer can't return him to work until his status changes. Flashcard 26. Jimmy has heard that he will be getting health care coverage from his company because of the new Affordable Care Act. His company employs only 10 people, but Jimmy is excited that he will finally get some insurance. He hasn't been feeling very good lately. Jimmy might have to wait until he can arrange for insurance through one of the exchanges. Jimmy should get an enrollment form from his boss because all employees will be covered by the new requirement that employers provide health care coverage to workers. Jimmy is out of luck. The new law only covers employers with 50 or more people, and there is no way Jimmy will be getting health insurance under the new law. Jimmy's boss just ran out of forms, but he will get some more from Heart Rate and then have Jimmy sign up for his coverage. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is employers are required to provide health insurance coverage or pay a penalty in lieu of that insurance only if they have 50 or more full-time workers. With only 10 employees, Jimmy's employer is not obligated to provide health insurance coverage. Jimmy may purchase it for himself through one of the exchanges set up for that purpose. Flashcard 27. Since 1978, the Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures have required that many employers do what? Validate each step of their employment selection process. B. Submit their employment selection process to the EOC. Review their employment selection process to be sure there are sufficient veteran applicants. D. Publish their employment selection process each year. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is each employment selection step must be validated if the employer has 15 or more workers on the payroll. Flashcard 28. What does PEST mean? Rodent Tracking and Removal Service. B. Payroll, Employment, Systems, and Training. C. Political, Economical, Social, and Technological. D. Personal, Exceptional, Systemic, and Training. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is state. Political, economical, social, and technological are the components of PEST. Flashcard 29. What are the two primary dimensions of behavioral situational theories of leadership? Effective leaders let their contributions be known as expertise. Listening more is helpful to leaders. Leaders are more logical and analytical rather than intuitive and emotional. Being more optimistic and less negative about the organization's strategy. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is John Katzenbar and Douglas Smith's research in the wisdom of teams identified that a critical behavior for leaders is to listen more. Flashcard 30. What is an employment brand? The market perception of what it is like to work for an organization. B. Product name that appears on supermarket packages. C. Industry assigned label serial number. D. A recruiting slogan. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an employment brand is a positive perception created in the job market for what it is like to work for that organization. Flashcard 31. Reviewing applicant resumes to determine who meets the minimum qualifications for a job opening is A. An example of an employment decision. B. Subject to disparity testing. C. Not an employment decision. D. A way to determine their salary requirements. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. There is no decision when simply determining who meets the minimum qualifications published in the job requisition. Flashcard 32. Why is it important to measure turnover, retention rate, and reasons why people leave the payroll? They are all things the CEO wants to know. They can contribute to a monthly heart rate report to the executives. They are examples of reports heart rate professionals need clerical support to generate. They can all help control costs. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is cost control is the reason for measuring turnover. Flashcard 33. Why should a job offer always be in writing? It specifies details of compensation, benefits, and employment at will status. The Federal Department of Labor requires it. State regulations specify that only with written offers can a job be filled. Actually, they should not be made in writing because they constitutes a contract. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is explaining compensation, benefits, and employment at will status in writing will minimize any complications later. Flashcard 34. Employment interviews and written tests are considered to be what? Essential to hiring manager acceptance of candidates. B. Selection devices that must be validated according to federal regulations. C. Heart rate purview only. D. Always acceptable if the tests are bought off the shelf and not created in-house. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Each employment interview and written test is considered a selection device. All must be validated according to the Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures. Flashcard 35. Training for job selection interviewers is A. Never needed. B. Essential for all managers and supervisors. C. Needed for supervisors who are new to employment selection interviewing. D. A good idea for people who have been hired from competitors' organizations. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. All interviewers must be properly trained so they will understand what questions they may and may not ask. Flashcard 36. Why are written job descriptions a good strategic tool? They give incumbents a reference so they don't do something they aren't supposed to do. It is important to be able to follow responsibility trees in writing. Federal civil rights enforcement agencies insist on written descriptions. They provide reference for job seekers as well as incumbents, managers, and supervisors. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is having a written job description provides an anchor for all concerned parties when needing information about job duties and responsibilities. Flashcard 37. The key benefit to developing long-term goals is A. Showing the interaction of planning, people, and processes. B. Separating the effects of culture against the intentions and goals. C. Increasing the influence on internal factors. D. Aligning the use of resources with intended strategic goals. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is that strategic planning is the identification of long-term goals, and having long-term goals allows management in an organization to align and appropriate resources to those goals in a consistent yet long-term manner. Flashcard 38. What are the stages of the strategic planning process? Formulation, buy-in, communication, evaluation. B. Formulation, development, implementation, evaluation. C. Development, communication, buy-in, implementation. D. Senior management, development, communication, implementation, evaluation. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. The 4 stages of the strategic planning process are formulation, development, implementation, and evaluation. Flashcard 39. Herzberg's motivation hygiene theory is based on which 2 categories of needs? Psychological and basic needs. B. Motivational and security needs. C. Extrinsic and intrinsic needs. D. Safety and self-esteem needs. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Hygiene factors are considered extrinsic and associated with job security, pay, working conditions, and relationships, whereas motivational factors are considered intrinsic, associated with recognition, achievement, and personal growth-related events in the job. Flashcard 40. Which is considered to be an heart rate strategic task in an organization? Developing an ergo training program to reduce repetitive injuries. B. Ensuring backup and retention of records offsite. C. Administering new hire orientation. D. Providing analysis to management to forecast workforce needs. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A, B, and C are considered activities and functions of the heart rate department. Providing analysis for forecasting future workforce needs for, say, a new plant or office opening identified in the strategic plan would be considered an heart rate strategic task. Flashcard 41. The Equal Pay Act prohibits wage discrimination on the basis of what? Race. B. Sex. C. Seniority. D. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is The Equal Pay Act requires that men and women be given equal pay for equal work in the same establishment. The jobs need not be identical, but they must be substantially equal. It is job content, not job titles, that determines whether jobs are substantially equal. Flashcard 42. You have been asked to develop a 5-year budget for the heart rate function. In what way would the existence of the organization's strategic plan be of help to you in the development of the multi-year budget? Because it's a budgeting activity, it will help in providing increased allotments for employees. The goals identified in the strategic plan will give you an idea of how to allocate monies for each year. A. The strategy plan will help you compete for training dollars versus marketing dollars. It will cause you to identify and prioritize the heart rate activities and their needed resources that align with the strategic plan's goals. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is strategic planning assists all function leadership, including the heart rate function, to allocate and request resources that will be needed to implement initiatives that align with the organization's strategy. Flashcard 43. Which of the following laws does not directly relate to a company's compensation or benefits programs? Equal Pay Act B, Fair Labor Standards Act C, Port-to-Portal Act D, Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is in 1978, the Civil Service Commission, the Department of Labor, the Department of Justice, and the Equal Opportunity Commission jointly adopted the Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures to establish uniform standards for employers for the use of selection procedures and to address adverse impact, validation, and record-keeping requirements. The other choices are laws that directly relate to employers' compensation programs. Flashcard 44. Which of the following is not a pay differential? Hazard pay B, shift pay C, base pay D. Overtime. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Hazard pay, shift pay, and overtime are all differentials. Base pay is the foundation of an employer's compensation program. Flashcard 45. A home appliance manufacturer guarantees its installers a base wage plus an extra $25 for each job completed to specifications. The employer is using AA, merit pay system B, productivity-based pay system C, competency-based system D, flat rate system. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is that the employer is using an incentive program based on performance results, which is considered a productivity-based system. A merit pay system does not address incentive pay. A competency-based system addresses capabilities, whereas a flat rate system establishes a fixed rate of pay. Flashcard 46. An employee elects a $500 annual deferment in a Section 125 flexible benefits plan. His employer pays an FSA claim for $500 in March. In April, the employee terminates his employment after deferring only $290 to his plan. What happens in this situation? The employee must pay the company $290 for the amount in excess of his actual deferral. The employer may withhold $290 from the employee's final paycheck. The employee is entitled to the full reimbursement for $500. The employee becomes ineligible for the full FSA reimbursement. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Flexible spending accounts are authorized under Section 125 cafeteria plans. FSAs offer employees a pre-tax method to defer pay toward their group health plan costs, as well as their out-of-pocket medical costs. FSA healthcare claims below the annual elected deferral must be paid by the employer when they are incurred, even though the employee's FSA payroll deductions have not created a sufficient balance to cover the expense. Flashcard 47. According to COBRA, a company with 20 or more employees must offer A. Health insurance to its employees, B. Continued medical insurance coverage to employees terminated for gross misconduct, C. COBRA benefits to workers if the company terminates its health plan, D. COBRA benefits to spouses of deceased workers. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is COBRA provides up to 36 months continuation of group health benefits in the event of a divorce or death of the employed spouse. None of the other choices is a valid COBRA provision. Flashcard 48. Which of the following is a common action taken in the United States to lower budgets that would most likely violate compensation laws in other countries? Reduce base salary levels. B. Offer early retirement packages. C. Delay or not fill open positions. D. Downgrade job titles. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is decreasing an employee's salary is illegal in most countries, particularly in Latin America and Europe. It is legal in the United States. Flashcard 49. If a leave under FMLA can be reasonably anticipated, how much notice must the employee give the employer? A 7 days, B 14 days, C 30 days, D 90 days. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is stay. The FMLA allows employers to require 30 days advance notice when the leave can be reasonably anticipated. The other choices are incorrect. Flashcard 50. An organization establishes an ESOP by A. Deducting a small amount from the individual's pay for the purchase of stock. B. Using stock as collateral to borrow capital from a financial institution. C. Providing upper management with a bonus. D. Having its profits distributed with favorable tax treatment. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an employee stock ownership plan. ESOP is an employee owner method that provides a company's workforce with an ownership interest in the company. In an ESOP, companies provide their employees with stock ownership, often at no upfront cost to the employees. ESOP shares, however, are part of employees' remuneration for work performed. Shares are allocated to employees and may be held in an ESOP trust until the employee retires or leaves the company. The ESOP can borrow money to buy shares, with the company making tax-deductible contributions to the plan to enable it to repay the loan. Flashcard 51. Heart Rate Manager. Sue makes sure that her heart rate staff has access to leading best practices and theories. What key element of Sue's leadership is she demonstrating according to Kuzes and Postman? Challenging processes. B. Inspiring shared vision. C. Enabling her staff to act. D. Encouraging spirit. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. A heart rate manager is following practice 3, enabling others to act, which is what Kuzes and Posner discuss in their research about exemplary leaders who encourage collaboration. Flashcard 52. What does it mean when a process has been validated? That the process has been archived and no longer needs review. The process has been approved by an external regulatory body like the FDA. That the process has been approved by upper management. D. That process inputs produce the same desired output each time the process takes place. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is validated processes have tightly controlled parameters in order to produce the same desired output through each trial. This ensures consistent, high-quality products or services. Flashcard 53. Mueller is in the planning stages of an heart rate initiative that focuses on providing a catered, healthy lunch to all employees each Monday. What is something she should focus on during the planning stage? Developing a SMART goal to determine why she wants to pursue this initiative and how she will know if it's successful. For 2. Identifying stakeholders and gathering their opinions on meal types and the value of this initiative. 3. Surveying employees who attended about how they enjoyed the food served. Creating a budget proposal. A. I am B. I and 3C. I and IVD, all of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is C. These are all tasks that should occur during the planning stage of this initiative. Surveying employees who attended to inquire about how they enjoyed the food would be part of the evaluation stage, not the planning stage. Flashcard 54. Which reputable approach encourages producing the most value from the least resources? 6 Sigma B. Lean C. Minimalist D. Sustainability. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. The lean approach is a method that originated in manufacturing but is now present in almost all aspects of business across a span of industries. It aims to maximize output from the least amount of input without sacrificing safety or quality. It can be used in conjunction with Six Sigma but is an independent approach. Flashcard 55. What is the best way for heart rate leaders to communicate acceptable and ethical behaviors in the workplace? It provide written protocols about what constitutes as ethical and unethical behavior. B. Relay that employees are continuously monitored with in-house cameras, so they should be especially mindful of their work behavior. C. Model acceptable and ethical behavior themselves as much as possible. Tell employees of their new hire orientation. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Modeling ethical behavior is the most effective way to show employees what is acceptable in the workplace. The other methods listed can help, but they may not be very effective on their own. Flashcard 56. The CEO of a company holds bi-weekly meetings with his entire organization to relay new information about company performance, trends, and person opinions relating to the industry. What is this an example of? A. Transparency. B. Overshare. C. Validation. D. Process control. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Transparency allows employees to know what is going on in most, if not all, aspects of the organization as it relates to their job. High transparency is associated with employees who feel valued, validated, and report high morale. Flashcard 57. Where should an employee first encounter an organization's ethical standards and policies? At the new hire orientation. B. During the first interview. C. In the job posting for the role. D. By reading a company press release. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. The job posting is the first place to share the company's mission, vision, and ethical standards. This attracts candidates with similar clues to apply. Ethical standards should be reviewed again during the interview process and new hire orientation to ensure good fit and promote the values. Flashcard 58. Genevieve is interviewing a new candidate, Marcus, with whom she is very impressed. He has the perfect educational background, professional experience, and cultural fit for a position she is trying. Phil, she has not met any comparable candidates during the hiring campaign for the position. However, when she runs a background check, she finds that he was arrested for a DUI approximately 8 years prior but was not charged. Besides this event, his background check returns clear. What is the best course of action for Genevieve to take in this situation? Eliminate Marcus from the candidate pool and continue interviewing other candidates. B. Assume that there is an error in the background check. C. Ignore the charge and offer Marcus the job. D. Set up an appointment with Marcus to find out the context around the charge. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is If Genevieve is truly impressed by Marcus and feels he could benefit the company, she should allow him the benefit of explaining in red flags, especially for events that occurred over 5 or more years prior. Flashcard 59. 2 heart rate staff members who are planning a worksite wellness initiative state that one of their initiative goals is to have healthier employees in their workforce. What is wrong with this goal? The goal is placing pressure on employees who are already busy. B. The goal is pushing personal agendas who are already busy. C. The goal is too detailed. D. The goal is ambiguous. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the goal is ambiguous. It provides no baseline, no definition of what constitutes as healthy employee. no definition of what constitutes as a successful initiative and is very subjective in nature. Flashcard 60. A company based in the United States is opening a new facility in Ireland. What will be a concern of heart rate professionals as the facility gets ready to launch? U.S. Foreign Policy Relations B. The assumption is that U.S. site and the Irish site will not get along with one another. C. The weather in Ireland. D. Immigration laws and work visas for new employees on site. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is depending on the candidates that apply for jobs at this new site, immigration and work visas will need to be considered based on what is required for Irish law. Flashcard 61. What is one way an organization can provide benefits that cater to a diverse talent pool? Provide higher salaries to underrepresented groups. B. Provide progressive options like benefits for same-sex partners or paternity leave. C. Provide different benefit options based on employee background and interests. D. Ignore benefits that deal with the employee's personal life, such as family benefits. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is organizations that consistently rank high in diverse and inclusive business practices often base business decisions on personal needs of employees, such as offering spouse and dependent benefits to same-sex partners and offering paternity leave in addition to maternity leave. Flashcard 62. Vera is a heart rate generalist that works for a medical devices company. She is in charge of recruiting and hiring engineers for the research and development team. However, she knows nothing about the product that engineers will be building. Why could this be a major problem during the hiring process? Vera may hire engineers that do not have the correct skill set. Vera may provide incorrect details about job responsibilities. 3. Vera may provide compensation packages that are too high or too low for the job. I and value B. 3C. I and volume 3D. All of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is D. Heart rate responsibilities have a major influence on other departments within the organization. Heart rate professionals. Determination of what talent the organization needs, who is hired to fill these needs, how employees are compensated, how to mitigate personal liabilities, and so forth should be based off internal demands of the organization. If Vera does not know this information, she cannot make appropriate hiring decisions. Flashcard 63. In a healthcare organization, which of the following might constitute as a KPI during an established fiscal period? A reimbursed payments. B. Cash payments. C. Revenue cycle. D. Number of uninsured patients. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is healthcare organizations need to collect payments, and reimbursements come from patients, insurance companies, and so on. The amount of payment collected is a key performance indicator that shows how much actual revenue is generated. Flashcard 64. Lars is collecting data relating to employee productivity. He notices that facility employees are more likely to take sick days in December, while the rest of the organization have sick days scattered throughout the year. Lars hypothesizes the facility employees call out sick to have extra holiday time. What is the issue with this reasoning? The program that generated this report has not been double-checked. Lars is clearly showing confirmation bias. Facility employees often work outdoors, which could be a confounding variable. There are no issues with this reasoning. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Flashcard 65. When reviewing data or published studies, what constitutes as recent data collection or study? Data collection or study publication that occurred within the last 2 years. B. Data collection or study publication that occurred within the last 3 years. C. Data collection or study publication that occurred within the last 4 years. D. Data collection or study publication that occurred within the last 5 years. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 66. Louise is meeting for the first time with a potential vendor to assist with her organization's annual wellness fair. What types of expectations should Louise discuss in person with the vendor? The vendor's role and communication timelines. B. The vendor's work history and time in business. C. The vendor's goods and services. D. The vendor's personal health philosophy. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 67. A small business owner has hired 4 staff members. A business owner considers herself a fair and ethical person. However, she has hired one relative, her best friend from college, and one person from a job posting site who was previously unknown to her. All 3 employees are highly qualified, care about the business, have exceptional work ethic, and will be cross-trained in the same functions. What is one way that the business owner can mitigate potential bias in her treatment of the employees? Go out of her way to be extra supportive and kind to the employee found from the job board. B. Pay each employee the exact same salary and give the same percentage of business tasks. C. Try and notice when she shows bias and stop the behavior whenever she catches herself. D. Go out to lunch daily as a group. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 68. Some employees have never lived in a foreign country before and are concerned about their safety in case of an emergency. How should heart rate address these concerns? Prepare a presentation comparing crime statistics between the U.S. and other countries to reassure employees that expatriation is safe. B. Monitor and share information regarding potential safety concerns in the foreign post and establish a system for employees to check in regularly. A. Provide employees with the numbers of local emergency response services. D. Only offer international assignment to employees who are confident about taking care of themselves in a foreign country. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is As a part of duty of care, heart rate's role is to stay informed about situations in the foreign country that may affect employees and to communicate relevant information to employees. Flashcard 69. Employees need to understand the options of an organization's benefits programs and choose their enrollment plan. What is the best way for heart rate to present this information to employees? Schedule a mandatory presentation with a detailed overview of all the benefits options so employees can make the most informed decision. B. Give employees the option of allowing heart rate to enroll on their behalf because heart rate has a more thorough understanding of the benefits programs. State. Employ a variety of communication strategies such as email, text message, postcard, and Q&A sessions. Display benefits program posters around the building so people in different departments can see the same information. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is escape. Flashcard 70. An organization is using a legacy HRIS because long-standing employees are comfortable with the software and feel it continues to meet their data management needs. However, several new employees are having difficulty using the outdated user interface and are pushing to adopt an entirely new platform. What is a good solution for this situation? Contract with a vendor that offers interface layer technology to develop a new user interface while maintaining the existing system. B. Get rid of the old system as invest in the latest HRIS before the current software becomes even more outdated. Reassign the new employees top key positions that already have more cutting-edge software in place. D. Create the organization-wide site where employees can submit anonymous feedback about using the current HRIS. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the main issue is user interface. Stay on top of technology while being cost-effective. Flashcard 71. And organizations' executives require that all heart rate policy recommendations be evidence-based. In this context, what is the definition of evidence-based A? Based on information from recent studies by prominent academics outside the organization to avoid conflict of interest. Based on data from internal and external sources that is collected and analyzed in a standardized way to drive decision-making. C. Based on conclusions made from careful observation of everyday working conditions in the organization. D. Based on conceptual frameworks for understanding complex business trends. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 72. What is the difference between a strategic plan and an individual action plan? A strategic plan is an end goal, and an individual action plan describes the steps to achieve it. B. A strategic plan is conceptual, and an individual action plan is concrete. C. A strategic plan is created by an organization's upper management, and an individual action plan is created by each employee. A strategic plan describes how to reach organization-wide objectives, and an individual action plan describes an employee's contribution. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 73. What are the results of a total remuneration survey? A comparison of workers' actual and desired salaries. B. A list of pay gaps within an organization. A report of market data on compensation and benefits plans. A group of employees who qualified for pay increases. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Flashcard 74. A large public relations firm is evaluating its heart rate functions to determine which tasks should be kept in-house and which tasks should be outsourced. Which task are they most likely to outsource? Payroll administration. B. Performance evaluations. C. Recruitment. D. High potential development program management. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is largely administrative. Flashcard 75. What is a factor that influences workforce supply? Worker attrition. B. Number of customers. C. Seasonal workload. D. Economic downturn. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 76. A large technology company has identified a group of key managers in various departments who were hired with employment contracts that included large equity options. The company went public 2 years ago and continues to see a steady increase in stock value. There is a realization that many of these managers may retire when they are eligible to exercise their stock options in 3 more years. What OD activity should heart rate be focused on related to this circumstance? Review the organization's retirement plan and begin counseling discussions. Expand the vacation policy for this group of managers. Design a succession plan and identify high potential employees. Hire executive coaches to help this group of management with work-life balance. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Flashcard 77. The process of analyzing and identifying the need for availability of human resources so that the organization can meet its objectives is known as A. Strategic planning. B. Pest analysis. C. Human resource planning D. Organization planning. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Human resource planning involves all facets of people management issues. Forecasting the need for more or fewer people, budget considerations, and recruiting sources comes into play. How heart rate can be used to support the organization's strategic plans is critical. Flashcard 78. The AB Trucking Co. is expanding its routes and hiring more people. Those changes will mean that employees will have to take on different work assignments. How should the heart rate manager handle those changes with the workforce? Explain the coming changes to all employees and solicit their help in deciding how to assign the new routes. Prepare a project plan and make sure everyone has a chance to see it before the implementation date. Explain the coming changes and tell the truckers that assignments will be made based on seniority. The new people will be assigned last. Explain the coming changes and let the senior executives handle the questions about how new job assignments will be made. Explain the coming changes and let the employees discuss among themselves how they want to assign routes to the workforce. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is whenever possible, involving employees in designing the plan for accommodating organizational changes will be the best for employee morale. Flashcard 79. Mergers and acquisitions and provide heart rate managers with special problems of cultural differences. To make sure that the cultures don't clash after the merger, the heart rate manager should assign a subordinate to monitor the complaint levels and report on problems that are being addressed. Conduct meetings with key players from each organization to outline the cultural values of each organization and determine how best to protect them in the blended employer unit. Send memos to department heads that specify the new cultural characteristics and express the expectation that the department heads will make it happen. Provide written complaint forms to all employees and express a willingness to listen to any comments the employees have to make about the merger. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is involving key managers from each organization can provide a foundation for whatever cultural values the new organization wants to build. Flashcard 80. Harriet has just taken over for the heart rate manager in her group, and her boss is asking for an update on the succession plan. He wants to see the employee skill inventory as soon as possible. Harriet didn't even know there was a succession plan. What should Harriet be looking for in her files? A confidential record that lists each employee's skills and abilities B. A list of only the top-rated people in the group who have computer skills C. A list of everyone in the group identifying each person's skills and whether they are currently ready for promotion D. A list of people showing what individuals are capable of doing now without regard for any future assignment. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. The list should show what skills each person has now and whether they are ready for promotion now or need further experience or training before being ready for promotion. Flashcard 81. An employee in Cortez's organization came to him and suggested that she and her coworker could consolidate their duties into one job and each work part-time, sharing the 40 hours each week so the work got done. As always, what would you say if you were Cortez? Unfortunately, the Fair Labor Standards Act and the Unified Job Consolidation Act say that sharing jobs is not permitted because it would violate union agreements. There is no reason that it couldn't work if Cortez believes the two people are capable and want to make it work. Having more than one person and one social security number on one job assignment won't work. It makes tax reporting impossible. It's not a good idea because it doubles the liability for workers' compensation and unemployment insurance. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Sometimes, using part-time workers to accomplish one job is a good solution. A great deal depends on the reliability of incumbents. Flashcard 82. The local county's workforce has been decimated in recent months because the pension plan is changing and folks wanted to get their higher level calculation before the changes cut the formula. The result, however, has been that a great deal of organizational intelligence walked out the door. The senior staff are suggesting you hire back some of the key personnel as temporary workers until you are able to get replacements trained. Is that a good idea? Hardly ever. It gives the newly retired people a way to double dip and make more money than they would have if they had stayed on the job without retiring. Sometimes, if the temporary period is truly used to train a replacement, it could get the organization across the institutional knowledge gap, passing along that information to someone new. Always, there is no downside to bringing back retirees as temporary workers. So what if they make a bit more? The work gets done without interruption. Maybe if there is a limit of 6 months on the temporary assignment in compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is One reason these arrangements sometimes fail is that they go on and on and on. There is no real replacement training going on. The retired employee is doing the same work as before they retired, and nobody is being transferred, promoted, or hired into the job as a replacement. Flashcard 83. The Tasty Good Corporation downsized because of intense global competition and modified its strategic business plan for the year. The most important task that the heart rate department's training and development function needs to do to support the change is to A. Cost-justify training. Work with employees on accepting the change. Evaluate the effectiveness of all training programs. Linked training and development to the new strategic plan. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is linking training and development activities to the new strategic plan is the first step to ensuring that activities and resources are aligned with the organization's new initiatives. Flashcard 84. One of the most important competencies of an heart rate professional is A. Skilled project manager. B. Masterful change agent. C. Excellent time management skills. D. Listening. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Although all those skills listed are important to the profession, being a masterful change agent is most important because change agents serve as a catalyst in helping others work through and accept change, along with implementing processes and programs that align with the change. Flashcard 85. Human resource management as a function within employer organizations has developed into a critical business participant because A. Strategic business success can be accomplished only if minor staff functions are given some consideration in planning conferences. Accomplishment of organizational objectives is dependent upon strategic deployment of all resources, including human resources. Finding a seat at the table with other senior executives requires heart rate executives to contribute to strategic efforts and offer accountability for resource management. D. Heart rate management is a function closely allied with accounting and finance, so strategic management of finance can't be complete without a contribution from heart rate. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Only if heart rate is willing to contribute to strategic planning and implementation and offer accountability for results will heart rate professionals be allowed to remain at the executive table. Flashcard 86. As the heart rate professional in your organization, you've been asked to submit a recommendation for the best way to convert to the matrix form of organizational structure. What is the most important issue you might encounter? Matrix organizations don't have strict reporting relationships, so supervisors will be upset at their loss of control. Because the matrix organizations are loose in their management oversight, results may need to be monitored by executives more carefully. When matrix organizations are formed, it takes some time for people to get used to working in that type of configuration. There is a break-in time required. Unions object to matrix organizations because they impinge on union representation authority. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is working on a team with representatives from many departments can take some time to get used to. There is a lag time between implementation and results simply because employees need time to get acquainted with the new working structure. Flashword E7. When participating in a merger or acquisition, part of the process includes assembling data from the due diligence process. In many jurisdictions, much of the information about employer liabilities requires disclosure. These things could include A, the number of parking spaces that have disabled markings, and the quantity of fire extinguishers in the building. The number and type of discrimination complaints, and the number and type of lawsuits dealing with employee management issues. The number and type of safety classes held for employees each year. The amount of budget allocated to overtime versus straight-time payroll. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashword 88. Heart rate professionals must be able to explain to employees the status they enjoy with the employer. While some employers operate by specifying that status to every employee in writing, those who opt not to do that will wind up operating with what type of employment relationship? All employees will have oral contracts based on the promises made during the interview process and conversations about the job offer. There are never any contracts made in the employment process, oral or otherwise. The default is a relationship based on promises from the employer. In the absence of contracts, the relationship is at will for each party. At will employment is never a default. It must be specified. So, the default employment relationship is as promised. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. In the absence of contracts, federal and many state laws default to at-will status. It does not require a written notification to employees, but that is always recommended. Flashword 89. Employees are sometimes caught up in downsizing efforts that are aimed at budget control. What are employers required to do when designing downsizing programs? Compare them to programs that were used by other employers with headquarters in their same city. Analyze their estimated results for age, race, and sex discrimination. Determine how many people will be affected from each department. Give the CEO and board of directors a written report on the downsizing impact on the organization's budget. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures and Age Discrimination in Employment Act idea requires analysis of the impact of selection decisions in downsizing. Flashword 90. One of your employees has just been discovered stealing large amounts of money from the accounts receivable account. You have the evidence in hand. What should you do about that? Reason with the employee and try to get them to give the money back. Suspend the employee for 2 weeks while the employee tries to stop taking drugs. File a police report of theft/embezzlement and criminal complaint against the employee, and then terminate the employer from the payroll. Call the insurance company to file a claim of loss. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is S8. Flashword 91. One of the unions representing people in your organization has just called for a boycott of your products and services. What can you do about that? Negotiate with the union whatever will be needed for them to cancel the boycott. Take the union to court and get a judgment against them. Begin an advertising campaign that explains how the union is wrong. Turn the entire problem over to the legal department. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 92. A departmental manager has called you to report that a union steward has been behaving badly in grievance meetings. What do you do about that, if anything? Nothing can be done about that. Call a steward in for a chat. Explain that they will be disciplined if they don't change their behavior. Advise the manager to suspend the steward for bad behavior. Call the union president and discuss the problem. Ask the union president to control the steward's behavior. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 93. Heart rate in the 21st century embodies A tactical administrative role and a strategic operational role. B, a strategic administrative role and a strategic operational role. C, a strategic administrative role and a tactical operational role. D, a support role for corporate strategies only. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 94. What are 3 of the 6 types of strategic differentiation? Service differentiation, accounting differentiation, employee differentiation. B, reputation differentiation, leadership differentiation, employee differentiation. C, product differentiation, relationship differentiation, price differentiation. D, international differentiation, competitor differentiation, banking differentiation. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Flashcard 95. BYOD policies must be carefully crafted to make sure these things are addressed. A, that dogs brought in the workplace are well behaved and always on a leash. B, legal compliance with current technology. C, security, legal compliance, and privacy of both employee and organization. D, that all levels of employees are offered to bring their dogs into the workplace. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Flashcard 96. A detailed heart rate analysis during the heart rate strategic process serves what purpose? Creating heart rates, goals, and objectives. B, reviewing the code of ethics. C, identifying the heart rate gaps. D, identifying key employers. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is C. Heart rate analysis includes a thorough review of the current systems and processes in place to identify gaps that may exist with current systems/processes and the future system needs. Addressing these gaps aligns with the basis of heart rate strategy. Flashcard 97. What is the main reason heart rate is considered a valuable player in the strategic planning process? Ability to provide programs. B, total rewards administration. C, access to employment laws. D, knowledge of the entire organization. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 98. Besides activities, heart rate should also measure A, progress against goals and objectives. B, meetings. C, results and outcomes. D, projects and initiatives. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Flashcard 99. What is the goal of an heart rate audit? Demonstrating value B, controlling costs C, identifying the existing gaps in heart rate processes D, comparing human capital to organizational needs. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Flashcard 100. Which form of measurement is an overall yet concise picture of the organization's performance? Balance scorecard B. Internal audit C. We're already to the external audit. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 101. An employee at a battery factory read an article about how certain chemical fumes have been linked with eye disease and blindness and has been circulating it with others. What is an appropriate heart rate response? A heart rate should caution the employee about spreading rumors without first talking to their supervisor. As a preventative measure, all employees should be required to buy stronger, more advanced safety goggles if they are assigned to positions on the floor. See, heart rate should combat the rumors by circulating a more detailed scientific analysis of the battery's chemical properties. D. After investigating the validity of the report, heart rate should determine whether it is possible to work with less hazardous materials or develop improved safety measure in collaboration with factory managers. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is D. Heart rate should conduct due diligence and follow OSHA to look for ways to eliminate hazards before enacting additional safety measures. Flashcard 102. Who would be the best featured speaker for training on workplace misconduct? A panel of employees who have made workplace misconduct complaints in the past. B. Someone from the C-suite. C. A Department of Justice representative. D. The heart rate professionals that organize the training. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is someone from the C-suite. An organization's culture of civility must be rooted in its leadership. Flashcard 103. In addition to improving training for employees, Heart Rate would also like to update its own policies to better address issues of workplace misconduct. Which of the following would be a useful measure to enact? Developing the heart rate workforce to handle all aspects of reporting, investigating, and addressing complaints internally. Contracting with a telecommunications group to set up a 24/7 harassment reporting phone line. C. Prioritizing diversity when hiring new employees. Maintaining close communication with senior level leaders to streamline effort. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Employees need to know that their concerns are taken seriously by Heart Rate and that their needs are reflected in the makeup of the Heart Rate department. Flashcard 104. What does variance analysis measure? The degree of difference between planned and actual outcomes. B. The percentage of pay gap between employees in similar job roles. C. The unique attributes of an organization compared to others in the industry. D. The consistency and objectivity of performance review results. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashcard 105. In order to standardize job functions between departments, Heart Rate is conducting job analyses. Which of the following is least likely to be included in the scope of these analyses? The type and frequency of tasks performed to be the industry standard for required competencies in this position. C. The supervisory chain who reports and who is reported to the position. D. The personal and professional qualifications needed. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is focused on standardizing internally, no need to look to outside criteria. Flashcard 106. As a result of the job analysis, Heart Rate has found that identical job titles in different departments in fact have different levels of responsibility. they would like to establish an added level of responsibility for those positions that have fallen behind. What is this process called? Job evaluation B, job elaboration C, job enrichment D, job enlargement. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is C, increasing job's depth by adding new responsibilities to an existing job title, whereas job enlargement refers to adding to the scope of the job by adding new tasks. Flashcard 107. What is one way that heart rate can play a leadership role in an organization's corporate social responsibility CSR plan? Identify a pool of high-performing employees to participate in CSR activities. B, collect, compile, and analyze data to demonstrate the quantitative and qualitative impacts of various CSR initiatives. C, establish separate planning meetings to assign and develop CSR objectives within different business units. D, devise an evaluation component to cite employees for non-compliance with stated CSR objectives. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is that Flashcard 108. What is the difference between lagging and leading indicators? Lagging indicators show areas where an organization is falling behind performance goals, while leading indicators show areas where an organization is pulling ahead of performance goals. B, lagging indicators highlight an organization's weakness compared to others in the industry, while leading indicators indicate its relative strengths. C, lagging indicators reflect performances that happened in the past, while leading indicators reflect activity that can change future performance or success. D, lagging indicators show where an organization's processes are outdated or obsolete, while leading indicators show where an organization has effectively implemented cutting-edge processes and technology. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A. Flashcard 109. What would be useful key performance indicators (KPI) to consider for heart rate benchmarking? Current time to hire in comparison to past timelines. B, employee retention and turnover rates in different departments. C, percentage of administrative costs in heart rate to administrative costs in the organization. D, ratio of total employees to heart rate professionals within the organization and in other comparable organizations in the industry. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is